Okay, good. So we're talking about the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot. One of the mitzvot of Purim. Purim has four mitzvahs, four mitzvot, and one of them is called Mishloach Manot, which means the sending of gifts, or more exactly, the sending of portions, which is, we do this mitzvah on the day of Purim. We find somebody that we, a friend, somebody that we know, or it could be somebody we don't know. We also, maybe, it could be that also. But what we do is we make two portions of food, like ready to eat food, good food, special things that we prepare. And we give it as a gift to another person. So that's one of the mitzvahs of Purim, one of the big mitzvahs of Purim. So a question that arises right away concerning this mitzvah is, how does it relate to Purim? What's it got to do with Purim? It's always nice to give gifts. And of course, Purim's a happy day. So gift giving, will contribute to the happiness of the day. But there's obviously any of the mitzvah, any mitzvah that the sages decreed is going to have terrific depth in that mitzvah, and it's going to reflect the particular subject of that day, of what happened then, how we're relating to what happened in that time, what's happening now with us in the experience of Purim. There has to be something very specific about a mitzvah. So how does this mitzvah fit with Purim? What happened on Purim? What happened on Purim was that the Jews who were living in the kingdom of Persia, almost all the Jewish people were in the kingdom of Persia. Persia was a gigantic kingdom, and throughout the kingdom, the Jews were dwelling. And uprises this evil ruler. There was Achashverosh and there was Haman, who made this decree against the Jewish people to destroy us completely. So that's the story of Purim. And then what happened is we have a miraculous turnaround, survival, all kinds of miracles. And we were able to survive and thrive and defeat our enemies and move up from there. We had a big renewal, a big hitchadshut of the nation after this. So it's a terrific miracle. We were saved from complete annihilation. So that's the story of Purim. And that's what's described in Purim. So now you have this mitzvah to commemorate Purim of giving gifts. So on the surface, it doesn't seem to be related. What's giving gifts got to do with surviving the threat of annihilation and overcoming our enemies and things turning around until we actually had terrific gain from the whole experience. So what's that with giving gifts? That's the question. So it's brought in the name of, it's brought from the sages and from many of the great thinkers of the Jewish people, that every decree that comes on the Jewish people in the course of history, whenever there's a decree against us, it doesn't happen randomly. It doesn't happen just from this and that. It happens because the Jewish people need to deal with something. We need an attitude shift. There's something in our attitude. There's something in our way we're looking at the world, which is somehow slightly off, or very off perhaps, that we need to wake up. We need to adjust. And so in comes some kind of evil decree. The people are aroused. They make that shift, and the decree goes off. This is behind all the different experience that we had throughout our history of decrees coming off us and eventually us surviving them and going further. That there's something that we needed to work on, something we needed to become clear about. And it's very hard for people to get an attitude shift. We tend to stay with the way we see things. And sometimes there needs to be, for the nation to have an attitude shift, there needs to be some kind of a big event like what happened in Purim and all the other times that we had decrees against us. So what was the situation in Purim that we needed to be woken up to? What was the attitude shift that was required from us? So if you look in the Megillah, you'll find some indications. For example, Haman talks about the Jewish people as Am Mufuraz Ben Amim, divided and split up among the nations. So even Haman, our enemy, or maybe particular Haman, was able to see our fault, that we were divided. And so that was that was what the situation we're in. But the question still is, we still have to explain, like, why were we divided like that? How did this division come in? In the end, we came together, and so that was the tikkun. We were divided, and we came together. But what's behind that? I want to explain a little bit deeper than that. Why were we divided? What was the problem that we had that created the division? So there's a hint to that in the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Pei Zayin. It says there in the Gemara, it says, Achot lanu katana, v'shadayim ein la, zo idem. Oops, let me just put my battery here. Sorry about that, folks. 1 second. Oh no, I went out.
No, you're still on.
I'm on? Okay, good. It just went off, my screen went off. Let me just put it in the battery. I forgot to plug this in. Okay, sorry about that. I forgot to plug in my computer. It went down. Okay, I'm back. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, what was behind this division that we had in the Jewish people at that time? And they needed to be addressed by this divine decree of this evil decree that came on us to wake us up, that we were divided. So what was the source of our division? So the Gemara in Pesachim says that, that again, I'll read you the pasuk, the drasha. It says, Achot lanu katana, v'shadayim ein la, zo ilem, shezachta lilmod v'lo lelamed. So the Gemara says that Elam was, Elam is referring to the kingdom of Persia. And it says about Persia that they merited to learn, but not to teach. That's what it says. So, and it brings an example of that. For example, Daniel, the prophet who was in Persia. So he was a great tzaddik and is a great Navi, but he wasn't a great teacher of the Jewish people like Ezra was. Ezra, who was in the Galut Bavel, so he was one of the greatest teachers of all times. He taught the whole Jewish people Torah. He brought it back to them in the biggest way. But you don't see that by Daniel. So that's more as an example of how there was something missing from the whole generation, even from their representative, who's going to indicate what's going on with the generation, is that they were able to learn but not to teach. So what that means is there was something missing in their in their expansiveness of vision. Like teaching means a person that's able to teach and is successful at teaching, it means that they have a very they value other people. They're able to get out of their own world and to reach out to others who see things differently than them. They're able to transfer their vision, their understanding to others. So that takes a sort of an expanded view of life, not as opposed to a contracted view, what's something called sar ayin, contracted vision where you're limited to your own world. When you can see beyond yourself and there's a generosity of spirit and understanding, so then that's what it means that people are able to teach as opposed to just learn. So it seems that that's what was behind the problem of that generation. There was something about Persia. It could be that we somehow absorbed it from the Persian culture, or that's what happened to us there when we were in Persia, that we became what's called sar ayin. We became people that were limited in their vision, more to some degree self-preoccupied, not generous of spirit, not able to reach out to others well, not able to properly appreciate the differences in people and see and create that bond with others. You find that, for example, that the Jews, Achid, doing it again, you have to mute it. That the Jews that were in the time at that time in the Achid, you hear it still doing it again. You have to mute it. It's unmuted again. Yeah, I think so. Oh, maybe it's his. Oh, it's Gordon's. So the Gemara describes that when the Achashverosh, who was celebrating his reign, made this gigantic feast for all the people of his kingdom. So many of the Jews went and joined the feast against the advice of their leaders. And so you see there something of what is being described here. You see that the Jewish people at that time, they were small. They didn't have a big vision of the Jewish people. They were joining in to the feast, the hedonistic feast of this ruler. They were sort of connecting to power.
It's my phone, so I'm going to sit outside of here, but I'm still with
you. You can't mute it? You don't know how to mute it?
It ain't.
Okay. So you see that people are sort of preoccupied with themselves. They want to be connected to power and greatness and luxury. And they're forgetting that they're part of the Jewish people and it's not appropriate for them to go to this event. And so you see that, so that's an expression of what we're talking about here, that we call it sar ayin, like limited view. And what happened in the end is there was this major threat of death. Esther goes in and she says, everyone should pray for me for 3 days and 3 nights and fast and pray for me 3 days and nights. And then, and that's what they did. And they all came together. And there was this coming together in the end as a result of the decree. And there was a terrific oneness and terrific unity and a prayer to Hashem together. So that was the end of this Gezerah. So now we have mitzvah of Mishloach Manot. So the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot is actually a very profound expression of what happened then. And I want to explore it more also, but what it means is that people are giving gifts to each other. Why? Because giving gifts is something that is part of the process of seeing the other person, expressing that you value the other person, of opening up the bond, of getting beyond the person's myopic view of the world. You're starting to somehow open up the connections between people in a new way, which is what needed to be done in those days. The problem in the door in the generation of Purim was that they had limited vision. They weren't seeing each other. And as a result, they were divided. And so now we have Purim. In the end, the decree came on them, the evil decree, the decree that they should be annihilated altogether. And as a result, they came together to cry out to Hashem. So now, each year when we celebrate Purim, we're also plugging into this spirit of coming together, of increasing to do this act of coming together, and the giving of the gifts is part of how this happens. So that's the main idea I wanted to say. Now I want to explain it a little deeper. So, question you might ask, a couple of questions here. So why is this such a problem that people don't know each other well? They don't appreciate other people sufficiently. that there becomes a division between people of this sort? Why is that such a problem? Another question is, why is it so important to overcome it? Why is it such a key thing that the whole decree came on the Jewish people to overcome this? And this is what this mitzvah is about. And also the third thing is, how does Mishloach Manos, how does the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos fix up this problem of what we're calling tsar ayin, of a limited vision, of not seeing the other person fully? So what I think about this, what I've thought about this is that each person lives in the world of his own understanding. We experience life through our thought and through our perceptions. And each person has a different world of thought. We live in what's called separate realities. I live in my reality, which is what my thoughts show me. My attitudes, my beliefs, my assumptions, my hopes, my fears, all those things create my reality. And each person has a different one. Depends where you come from, it depends what you've thought about, it depends your personality, depends on your influence, all kinds of things. How you arrive at your different viewpoints and your different assumptions and beliefs. And no people are alike. Just like people's faces are different, their attitudes are different. So everybody is deeply different from everyone else. And that creates a challenge for us because in general, I'm attached to my ways of my beliefs and my understandings. They're important to me, especially if I've worked on them and invested in them. And then I come and I meet people that they don't think like I do. And they don't value the things I value. They don't believe the things I believe. They might believe the opposite. They might value the opposite things that I value and not value things that I value. They might think the things that I worked on so hard to understand and to become part of me, that to them, that's like, it's irrelevant, And, that, but in any case, there's such differences in people. And so that's interesting. So sometimes we don't realize that. We don't realize that he doesn't think like me because he doesn't see things like me because he doesn't have the same thought system as I do. We're different. We live in different worlds. And then somehow that surprises us. And what happens is also we get upset about it. We feel challenged. Just because of their differences alone, we feel challenged. How come he doesn't appreciate what I appreciate? How come he doesn't value the things which are so important? How come he doesn't see that? And you start to feel threatened by that person's attitude. It's so almost like subconsciously you feel like threatened and insecure around those people that have different views from you. And then also all the more so when they may actually challenge you, criticize you, insult you in some ways, maybe probably unintentionally, but they don't, they have a different worldview from you. So what seems so important to you may seem to them unimportant. And this is what happens constantly in our world. People naturally pull apart because of their different viewpoints and because that their different viewpoints are built in their world of thinking, which are so different from each other. And as a result, people pull apart. There's an interesting thing in the Gemara. The Gemara says that when you go into the Beis Medrash to learn, you should say a tefillah first. You should say a tefillah that you ask Hashem to help you, that you shouldn't make a mistake in learning the halacha, that you shouldn't come to a wrong conclusion and other people laugh at you. Because, and that tefillah comes because it seems like a strange tefillah. Like, why are you praying that you shouldn't make a mistake and people laugh at you? Why should that happen? The answer, it happens all the time. It's human nature. Since people are so different, if I say something looks wrong, they'll say, oh, it's because they feel like condescension because of where they're coming from. There's just this gap between people that comes up so easily. So you pray that you shouldn't make a mistake that people should laugh at you. It's so common for people to do that. That comes out of our separate realities. To me, his mistake looked stupid and obvious, and so you laugh at him. But to him, that's what he saw at that moment, And it's hard for us to realize that everyone lives in their separate reality of their thinking. So what happens is it's very natural and very common for people to sort of pull apart. And especially if someone actually insults each other or laughs at the other person, even without that, even just from the differences alone, people start to move apart from each other. They start to feel, now this is very interesting. I want to point out this also. People are insecure. There's an insecurity that comes out in the situation that they feel like, oh, I'm being threatened somehow, in their mind, when someone disagrees with them or sees differently from them, all the more so they criticize them, even though they're not trying to, they're not necessarily trying to belittle them, but to them, it looks like wrong to them. Their attitudes, or they have a different attitude, so they're different. So what happens is people become insecure with that. They start to feel threatened. They feel the thing that's so important to me, he doesn't care about, or he's like attacking it. Now, he could be he's not attacking it, but in our subconscious minds, we feel attacked many times when people are different from us, when disagree with us, when see things different from us. We feel like it creates insecurity in us. And then when the person starts to get insecure, so then what happens is he starts to see faults in the other person. And this is all subconscious, but it happens all the time, happens automatically. He sees what you think in your subconscious mind, he's devalidating the things that are so important to me. And you feel threatened. Like, what do you mean? How could he do that? I mean, I'm right. I have to be right. He can't say that. He can't devalidate me. So what happens is a defense system comes in, defense mechanism comes in. You start seeing faults in that person. He does something, and to you it looks really bad. And was it bad? Was it not bad? Maybe he made a mistake, but now it really bothers you. You see, that person is making mistakes. He's problematic. And you see other faults, and you keep seeing faults in that person. And it creates more and more division. Why do you see faults in him? Because if there are faults in him, then his different attitude doesn't threaten me because he's faulty. And it's so strange that people are like that. It's not conscious, but it's very strong subconscious. We want people to think like us. It bothers us when they don't think like us. It bothers us so much we start to see faults in them. And then it doesn't threaten us as much, or we think it's not going to threaten us. But what actually creates is that's exactly what we're talking about. That's called tsar ayin. I start to see bad in the person. I don't see good in him. I don't see his value. I'm not, and we're pulling apart. And it keeps going. There's differences, and the differences make me feel insecure and threatened. As a result, I start to see faults in him. And maybe I express that, or I express something which creates insecurity in him, and it goes back and forth, and we become more and more divided. And there becomes division, there becomes resentment, and there becomes hate between people. And it's extremely natural, extremely automatic because of the insecurities that people have, and because they're attached to their thinking. And they don't realize that other people just have different thinking. That's just the way it is. And that it's okay. It's okay that everyone can only see what your thoughts show them. So, so it's natural for people to pull apart. And I'll give you other examples of this in the Torah. Another example is there's a mitzvah called prika. The prika vatina means that a person's going with his ox or with his donkey, and it collapses under its burden. So, and let's say he's your enemy. That's the story the Torah tells. Your enemy's going, his ox collapses under its burden. That could be nowadays could be a flat tire. Let's say a guy goes and he gets a flat tire. And you think, this is my enemy, I'm not going to help him. So the Torah tells you, no, you have to help him. It's a very important mitzvah to go help that guy. And even if you could have done another mitzvah, this oversees the other mitzvah, because it has the guy you hate, you do it for him specifically. The guy you don't like, you specifically need to help that guy. There's another guy you could help, maybe more, but you have to help the guy that you have an enmity with. And why is that? Because when you go and you show that you value him enough to take off your time and help him. So what happens is, the thing that created the division between you was insecurities, that people are threatened by each other. They're threatened by their differences. And now when you go and you show that you value him, nevertheless, all of a sudden things start to change. They start to turn around. He's going to start to say, oh, he values me after all that. I thought he didn't value me. And the truth is, they were just different. And he saw things that you didn't see, and you saw things he didn't see. But now he showed you that he values you nevertheless. All of a sudden you start to see positive in him. And it creates oneness and togetherness between people. That's a mitzvah of prika. You find another mitzvah like that. Another story like that in the Torah. You find the story of Yaakov and Esav. Esav hated Yaakov. Esav wanted to kill Yaakov. Decades of hate building up in a very hateful person. Yaakov comes to meet him. Esav has a gigantic army to destroy Yaakov and his family. Yaakov says, let me try to see if I can change him around. He starts sending emissaries and gifts. And he goes and he shows that he values Esav, that he recognizes him as a valuable person. All of a sudden, miraculously, in 1 second, Esav starts to shift around. So that's the same thing of this mitzvah of Shalach, of Mishloach Manot. That's what it means. I go on and give a person a gift. I give him 2, portions of food, nice food, on Purim, on this very special day. I give him a gift. What does it mean? It means I'm showing that I value him. I went out and bought the gift. I wrapped the gift. I brought it to him. I made something nice. I used this occasion of Purim to give him a gift. This very high time, this time of arousal, of spiritual arousal. So I give him the gift, and what happens is as the person feels, he values me. And that creates a cycle of coming together. People are insecure. They feel rejected. They feel the differences means that they reject each other. They feel that distance grow up. Distances expand very quickly between people. You go and you do one gesture to show that you value the person. All of a sudden, it creates a different cycle in the opposite direction. They start to come together. So that's why this is the mitzvah of Purim, because on Purim we were separate. We were in the land of Persia, where this property of separateness, of feeling different and isolated from each other, and of tsar ayin, of small-mindedness, not valuing the other person, not seeing the other person, being caught up in our own world. That's what happened to us in Persia. And as a result, there was this vast decree against us. We were threatened with annihilation, so we'd start to turn around. And now, when we have Purim, we are plugging into that same spirit, that we're getting above the small-mindedness, the inability to appreciate and express our appreciation to other people and to create that bond. So we give the Mishloach Manot to arouse that process of turning it around, of bringing ourselves back together, of undoing the natural tendency for people to pull apart because of their differences and because of their discomfort with the differences, that we get insecure because he seems not to value what I value, and maybe even says so. And I start to resent him, and I start to find faults with him, and people pull apart. And then how do we come together? Just like if a small statement could start to separate us. When I show that I don't value what he values, or when a person laughs when a person makes a mistake in halacha, let's say. But then just like the small, and then they start to pull apart, they start to see faults, and it goes worse and worse. But then with one small gesture, with this gesture of giving a gift on Purim, let's say, so what happens is it starts to bring everything in the opposite direction. Oh, he values me. He wants to show that he has love for me. He has appreciation. And all of a sudden things start to turn around and start to see positive in each other. He starts to be positive in you. So that's the mitzvah of Purim. So very interesting is in the halachot of Purim itself, you find this idea in a very interesting way, very cool way, in the halachot of Purim, of Mishloach Manot. So one of the halachot is in the Ramah, he brings that let's say you go and you give a person a gift, and he doesn't want to take it. He says, no, I don't need that. I have enough gifts, or he says something to you and he rejects your gift. So the Ramah says you still fulfilled your mitzvah. Amazing, amazing halacha. He says you fulfilled your mitzvah. He rejected it, but you did your mitzvah. So what does that mean? Why did you fulfill your mitzvah? You didn't accomplish giving the gift. Didn't happen. He said no. Apparently he didn't like you, he didn't respect you enough, or something was wrong there that he didn't want to take your gift. So then it would seem like it had the opposite effect, like it created division. But no, the Ramah says, no, you fulfilled the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah. So what does it mean? So what I think it means is that you did your part. You went and you showed you valued him by trying to give him the gift. He didn't take it, okay. Because he had baggage, he had maybe resentment from before. He thought that he didn't want to do that. But he saw you did that. He saw that you wanted to give him a gift, even though maybe you weren't so together before. And what happens is something happens in a person's heart. You know that there was a little shift when you wanted to give him that gift. You don't know how big enough, it was big enough yet to make him want to come back together with you. Although it's possible that afterwards he will. He rejected it right now, but he saw you wanted to give it. And and you did your part. And you went and you gave him the gift to show that you wanted to show him that you value him. And he saw that you did that. He rejected it because maybe he had from the past, he thought, this person doesn't really like me. This person, I have things against him. But now, and he said he didn't want to take it, but he saw you tried. And that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to let go of other things and make that gesture to the other person. You know, I saw myself many times. Many times when I'm passing people and I said hello to them, so they didn't say hello back. So I felt bad. I said a cheerful hello to someone and he didn't say hello back. So I felt bad. So the next time I saw him, I noticed that he's actually became more positive towards me. Sometimes I didn't notice and I started to not say hello again. But then sometimes I realized, oh, he's looking for hello this time. Like it seems to me that he's against me. All of a sudden, I said one hello to him and I see he starts to warm up to me. Maybe not right on the spot, maybe a little later. But the point is that each gesture starts that process going, that people start to pull back together. Because the reason we're divided is only because of insecurity. It's an illusion based on insecurity. We're different and that bothers us. And so we start to find fault in the other person. What if that person goes and gives me a gift? And on Purim, he says, take these. I want you to take these. All of a sudden, something happens in my heart. I start to feel, oh, that person cares about me. That's what Yaakov Avinu knew when he gave to Esav. You have other sources in the halacha that also show that indicate this. A very interesting thing in the discussion in the poskim. It says in the pasuk, it says Mishloach Manot. So they ask, why does it say Mishloach Manot? Why does it say sending gifts? It says in the Megillah, it says those words, Mishloach Manot, Ish L'Reyehu. Sending of gifts, the institute of the sending of gifts, Ish L'Reyehu. Why sending? So some poskim learned that you're supposed to do it with the messenger. You should give the gift not directly to him, give it to someone else, and he'll give it to him. So some poskim say that, but other poskim say, and this is like some of the greatest poskim, they say, no, that's not it. Doesn't mean that. Because it doesn't really fit with the mitzvah itself. If the mitzvah is about reyut, it's about friendship, so it's better if you give him yourself. So why would the pasuk tell you to do it with a messenger? It doesn't make so much sense. So they say that's not what it means. It doesn't mean do it with a messenger. It means send it to him. And if he doesn't take it, it doesn't matter. That's what they say. That the Ramah, he could have learned this from the pasuk itself. That your job is to show that you value him. He doesn't take it, that doesn't matter. You already did the act. You opened up to his heart a little bit. You showed him you value him. All of a sudden, his insecurities start to drop. Did he take maybe at the point when you try to give him, he was insecure, but it's going to affect it. And so the mitzvah is l'shloach manot, not that you should receive them, that you should send them. Also, you find another, also in the psukim, you find another hint to this, because it says you have to give 2 portions. Now, why do you have to give 2 portions? Why don't you give 1 portion of food? You could have more people that way. The answer is you give 2 portions because you want to show him that you value him, that you want him to have a full gift, not a little gift. A gift with 2 portions doesn't mean you have to spend all your money on that, but it means that you have to show a gesture that shows, yes, I'm giving you 2 gifts to show that I want to give you a full present, like a pineapple, and like a whole bag of chocolate or something like that, or a little wine bottle or something like that. 2 gifts that shows generosity of spirit, because that's what it's about. It's recreating that movement towards each other. So, and this is all very important, extremely important. It's like an ultimate value in Judaism, that we should have this togetherness, and we should work against the natural process of division. And why is it so important? Not only because it feels good and because it's creative and it's productive, that's all true, but even more than that, because it brings us close to Hashem. It says in the pasuk, "Atachat v'shimcha echad, mika amcha Yisrael." What's the end of the pasuk? In Mika amcha goy echad ba'aretz. That you are one and your name is one, and who is like your people, unified people in the land. Meaning, when we are unified, we become one with Hashem also. Our unification is we're seeing the divinity in each other. We see, even though we have differences, every person is divine. Every person has godliness in him. So when we're together with Hashem too. It's the most meaningful thing. Also, when we say Shema, for example, we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It doesn't say Shema Atah, Hashem Elokecha, Hashem Echad. It's not addressed to the individual. This affirmation of God's oneness. It's addressed to the group. Shema Yisrael, all of Yisrael. When you're part of Yisrael, then that allows you to unify with Hashem also. To that brings out your belief in Hashem also, because in each Jew there's this spark of divinity. There's this Jew, there's divine soul. And so as we unite each other, we're uniting with Hashem as well. So that's what the mitzvah, that's what, at least part of what this mitzvah of Mishloach Manot is on Purim. It's coming to affirm what happened in the time of Purim. And it's very, very interesting that in the time of Purim, we were divided. We had this myopic view of each other. We didn't see each other well. We were caught up in ourselves. We didn't value each other enough or express our value to each other. We became divided and came out of a decree that we should deal with that. And finally we did. We dealt with that because of this degree of annihilation. We dealt with it and we came back together. And as a result of our coming back together, we had terrific success after it says they accepted the Torah again. They had a great renewal. Eventually we came back to Eretz Yisrael and we had a Beis HaMikdash because of our coming together. Our oneness is our success. So now on Purim, we have this seemingly little mitzvah that you give a gift. But little is big. It's gigantic. It's this little gesture that starts to reverse the process of dividing. So basically, that's what I wanted to say tonight. I'm very interested in anybody have questions or comments, and to discuss further if anybody wants to at this point. Any comments? Any questions?
I guess not, Rob.
Okay, fine. Okay, very good. So everyone should have a Purim Sameach. We should be zochet to Achdut and Ava V'Reut.
Thank you.